So Don, it's 6:02 if you want to get started.
I have no video.
Yeah, I'm having the same issue. I can't get my camera to turn on.
All right, let me see if it's sometimes it's like that in the settings and I need to go in and fix it.
Yeah, it's just this video has been stopped by the host.
I'm sorry. So okay, I'll make sure. There we go. Yeah, it defaults to that, so you have to override it when you set up the meeting.
Okay. All right, that's better.
gotta
I'm
turn
just
my on.
checking.
Here
I
we go.
see Bob Fisher. I need to move him over to panelist. And I think that's it. Okay.
Um,
All right, can anybody hear me? Okay,
Yep.
not sure why you can't see me, but
Anne Marie, are there others of the public on already?
Yes. If you go to the participants at
Oh
the
yeah,
bottom of
16.
the
Okay.
screen, you can see. But Bob, look at are you on a computer or something?
I'm on a laptop. There I am. I
There
figured it
you
out.
are. Okay.
Okay. Well, we're all here. Can everyone hear me okay?
Mhm.
Yes.
Great, great. Anne Marie, one technical issue. Are we, okay, John McGovern's having a hard time getting on for some reason.
John's on. His video's not on. I mean, his name's on the screen.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
I'm here.
John, are you here?
Yep.
Okay. Great. All right. And this meeting is being recorded. Is that right, Anne Marie?
Yes.
Okay, super, super. All right, let's get started. We'll start the meeting. This is the November 17th, 2020 meeting of the Lewes Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I'd like to start with welcoming everyone. Special speaker tonight, Steve Savidge, and all the committee members and city officials that are in the meeting. First of all, I want to start out by bringing up a few announcements that have come up in the last week or so. I want to make everyone aware of a web conference that'll be going on Thursday. It's being co-sponsored by Bike Delaware. And the name of the conference is Improving Intersections for People. It is an all-day conference, I think from 9 to 4. But the reason I'm bringing it to your attention, and I believe I sent everyone a link earlier this week, or maybe last week, is that one of the intersections out of the 50 intersections that are studied for this conference, one of the intersections is the Gills Neck Road and Savannah Road intersection at the foot of the drawbridge. Certainly an area that we've been concerned about as a committee because of the bicycle traffic that's usually turning at that intersection or crossing the drawbridge. If you didn't get the link, or if you're interested, let me know. I think the section on Lewes is going to be from 1 to 1:45 on Thursday. The deadline to register is tomorrow around, I think, 12 noon. A second announcement, I got word from Anne Marie, I think it was yesterday, who had heard from DelDOT that they will start to install mile markers on the Georgetown Lewes Rail Trail starting sometime in the spring of next year. The markers will be a standard DelDOT mile marker that we see along roadways. Once the markers are installed, a map will be distributed to local and state authorities. This is mainly for safety reasons, for emergency response. And mile 0 will begin at Gills Neck Road and then head west at a quarter of a mile increments. And then my last announcement, I'm sad to say, is that Marta will be stepping down as a committee member as of January of 2021. So Marta, thanks for all you've done, and thanks for being part of the committee.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm sorry, I just can't continue on at the moment.
Next item is approval of the minutes from the September meeting. I hope by now everyone has had a chance to read through them. Thank Jackie for scribing these. I don't have any additions or deletions. Does anyone else in the committee have any comments?
No.
Okay. Then a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, the minutes are approved. Moving on to old business, we're still waiting to hear about the bicycle-friendly community application. We were told it would be approximately about 2 months before we would hear anything, which we're approaching that deadline. I know one of the things that they were working on their end was completing a community survey, and that just closed on November 15th. I did request responses from committee members as well as city officials to respond to the community survey, I guess about a month ago. Hopefully you all had a chance to fill that out. That is sort of part of the process as they evaluate our application. So hopefully we'll hear something early in December. And then moving on to the second item of business, the committee is revisiting the Bike Ambassador Program. It's been something we've been talking about over the last year or so. And obviously we put it on hold earlier this year because of COVID. So we'd like to look at the program again. Bob Fisher has invited Captain Steve Savidge from the Delaware State Parks Natural Resource Police to provide his valuable insight and experience with the State Parks Park Watch program, which I believe, as Bob was saying in the last meeting, there are a lot of similarities between the Park Watch program and I think what the committee views as potential Bike Ambassador program for the city. And Bob, if you'd like to add anything else to that intro, please do.
No, not really.
Okay. Well then, Steve.
Information we sent out, pretty
Right.
self-explanatory.
And Anne Marie, I believe you have the presentation.
Do I have the presentation? Did you send it to me?
I did in the agenda.
Okay, so it's probably, yeah, let me.
If not, I have a like a real short one. It's like 15 slides.
Okay.
I would have to share my screen.
Would you prefer to do it that way? I can bring up what's on the agenda.
No, it's probably easier this way. I think that might be the full presentation.
Okay. All right. So you should be able to share your, you should be able to share your screen. It's set up.
Right. Yeah, like Don said, I'm Steve Savidge. I'm with the Natural Resources Police for State Parks, and this is something we started when we started with our own bicycle trail program. I don't know, probably about 17, 18 years ago now, and it's worked out pretty well for us. So a little bit about our Park Watch program. It was to encourage park visitors to take a more active role in protecting and preserving our parks. Our goal was to deter crime, not catch criminals. It's a force multiplier for our enforcement staff. It's always good to have extra people out there seeing what's going on in the public. You know, when we're on patrol, we'll drive by an area. We have maybe 15, 30 seconds, maybe a minute or two if we take our time to really see what's going on in an area. But a lot of these folks are out there every day. They're riding their bikes, they're bird watching, they're fishing, They're taking a walk. So they see a lot more because, you know, if we go through the trail, we're there for a couple minutes and they may be there for 2 hours. So they get to see a lot more than we do. Our folks have shirts that they can, or some people choose not to wear them, but they can wear our shirts. It kind of identifies us and gives us more of a presence out in the park. And to provide visitors with a safe, positive experience. So we kind of divided it up in 2 different areas as this got a lot bigger, because it got too big for just the enforcement staff to manage. So I have what I call Park Watch. And these are folks who kind of directly assist our enforcement staff. They're comfortable addressing a minor violation, like a dog off a leash or somebody in the dunes where they don't belong. They report directly to the enforcement staff. Their minimum age of 18, and it's an active role. It's people who are comfortable making contact with park visitors. And then we have other folks who may not really want to contact, but still want to participate in some level. We call those folks trail stewards, and they're indirectly they work with us indirectly, and they answer more to the management end of state parks. They observe and report stuff only. They're not comfortable making contact, so they're not making contact with people. It's more of a passive role. So I'm not sure, you know, what direction is good for you guys, but we kind of divided it into 2 different areas. And we had one of the Northern Greenway trails came on board, and I trained, I don't know, 150 people, and that's just too many people for me to manage. That's when we did the separation. Kind of the roles and responsibilities: education, safety, public relations, protect and preserve our natural resources. Under education, we ask our folks to know a little bit about our rules and regulations, answer questions if people have questions about our rules and regulations. We ask them to know a little bit about the resources that are in the park, a little bit about our programs and facilities, give directions and help visitors navigate around our facilities and programs, know a little bit about what's going on in nature centers. And this is the same thing, you know, for a town, it would kind of be like, and I'm sure a lot of the folks would already know what's going on in the town. We get questions about restaurants, but it's good to have answers about some of the history questions. You know, the folks are going to be out there. They're going to be, you know, probably be wearing something that says ambassador. Be nice if they knew something about what was going on. And safe use of resources. And the main thing for our bicycles is we tell people that they need to be riding in a manner that's safe for elderly and for children. You know, the elderly can't get out of the way fast enough with some of the bicycles, and children are just kind of like, you know, they run without a plan, and they just, you know, kind of dive in front of bicycles, and they can get hit. So that's what we tell them about our bicycle trails. We ask them to promote the safety of visitors, deal with minor infractions, look for unsafe conditions. You know, we have a lot of folks that report trees that are coming down or branches that are about to come down, damage to the bridges. We have, and some of our stuff is getting old on our bike trails now, so fence posts are coming down, fence railings are breaking. So it's nice to have somebody out there on a regular basis, and frequently they'll take a picture and send me a picture, and it can be fixed in the next day. We also ask the folks to foster positive relations with the visitors. A lot of times, you know, these may be the only people in the park that they see representing the park. So we ask them to make contact, communicate with the people, share information, answer their questions. And we ask them to empower the community to participate in crime prevention also. You know, if you say something, or if you see something, say something, and here's the number to call, or you can go to the park office to file a complaint about something that went on. So, and a lot of the folks, and Bob can probably attest to this, the public is comfortable contacting, you know, when they see a volunteer. Sometimes in a uniform, we may be a little, people are a little apprehensive about making contact with us. and they're a little easier with volunteers. So if they have something they want to report or some suggestion that they want to make, the ambassadors or Park Watch folks are some of the first folks that hear those things. One thing I say, if they are interacting with the public, then they probably should be trained to interact with the public. Things not to say, how to de-escalate people. And we don't want people getting in like a verbal confrontation or, God forbid, a physical confrontation. So, I always put them through a little bit of a training about what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. Recruiting strategy, probably the biggest thing for recruiting for me is having our folks out there, being visible with, a traffic vest on or a shirt that says Park Watch. Most of my recruiting comes from other Park Watch members. And I'll get a phone call or an email and say, hey, I met so-and-so on the trail. He told me about the Park Watch program and I'm interested, how do I get started? We have uniforms, uniform shirt, banners. We don't do hats anymore. We have some signs. It's nice to recognize the people that volunteer. We also, I try and give them special permissions. If they have something like one guy's in an astronomy club and I let them come into the park 1 or 2 nights a year to have their little a club meeting and look at the stars after the parks are closed. So the folks that are, kind of giving us their time, we try and give back to them as much as we can. This is one of the posters that we came up with. Park Watch Ambassador. We toyed around with the different names for it. We kind of settled on Park Watch, but they are ambassadors for the park. They wear an ID badge. If somebody questions them or challenges them, they do have some sort of official ID from the department. In the training, we make sure their duties are specifically outlined. We put out a set of parameters and we give ramifications if they should violate the conduct parameters. We make sure they know what to look for and who to call when they see something. I like folks to report, and sometimes this is a little informal, but there is a report form that says, I was in the park, I rode the bike trail on November 9th from 2 to 4 o'clock. Not everybody sends me a report, and I'm fine with that. I just like to know how many hours they get. That's one of the main things. Some of the folks that run into some more problems, I ask them to do a report so I know when and where they are. And if I get a complaint about somebody, I kind of know who was there. We collect their hours for recognition, and we also use it for grant sharing. So, there are some grants out there where they'll take volunteer hours as part of your contribution. So we track them for that also. Evaluation and recognition. We have in state parks, it depends on the budget and who the volunteer coordinator is at the time, but we have various forms of recognition. Sometimes it's, and this is currently how it is, if they do, so many hours, they get something, but there was a time where we would have cookouts and award ceremonies, but currently now we're just giving out park permits and that type of stuff. So how do you get the program? I'm more than welcome, or I'm more than happy to help you out any way that I can. It's really about recruiting people, training people, and I say involve your police department. It depends on what kind of level that you want to go to. I think it's probably nice if the police department is involved, but if the police department doesn't, necessarily want to play a role in it, then that's fine also, as long as they know who to call and where to call. But it's been a real benefit to our police department. I lean on my Park Watch folks heavily. I wouldn't be able to do the special events that we do in state parks without them. I know that you're looking at a little bit of different program, but I really couldn't do it without them. And I'll stop my share. And does anybody have any questions?
Or you're on mute.
Oh yeah, I thought I unmuted it. Okay. I know when I was working with the District of Columbia government in their fisheries program, there was somebody who wanted to tell people who were illegally fishing in the Potomac River to, to go to them and say something. And our boss said, no, we cannot do that kind of thing. We're not enforcers, and you could get shot. Is that something you guys have thought about, or it's?
Yeah, and we have our folks mostly just telling them what the regulation is. Hey, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but you have to have your dog on a leash when you're in state parks.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're met with some sort of resistance, and then they call us.
Okay.
So it's more of just kind of observe and report. Like, hey, I don't know if you know it, but this is the regulation. And we've had folks that have been a little more aggressive, and some of the conduct things we have are put in there because people were a little too aggressive.
Okay, thanks.
Do you have any handouts of the rules that you like the ambassadors give out saying this is the park regulations, or?
Yeah, as part of the training, they get a full copy of our park rules and regulations.
No, I mean, do they have any that they can give out to the public?
Oh, we don't have that. No, I mean, it's probably not a bad idea, but we don't currently have that.
Yeah, we've talked about having maps available for our ambassadors to hand out to residents or to visitors that are typically, sometimes they get lost when they're cycling through town. One question that came up in the chat, Steve, is from Officer Moyer. I guess it was a comment. He said Lewes is looking to have a mandatory shirt and possibly a photo ID.
He was responding to another question in the chat before it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see that now. Thank you. Officer Moyer, would you like to add anything from a police department perspective?
No, looking through what Chief Spell has so far put together, he's pretty much followed the state parks program, other than changing a few things where, we don't have dunes and all that stuff. But he's looking at mandatory IDs and shirts from what I can see to identify them. And he's looking to have them do reports anytime they do it instead of being an option, at least at this point. I don't know how set he is on this document that I have, but it pretty much follows everything that Savidge has said during the meeting so far.
Okay.
May I ask a question, please?
Of course.
Steve Savidge, on a typical day, how many volunteers or ambassadors do you have in a park? For example, in the Cape Henlopen State Park?
It depends. We don't set it up as a shift or a designated time period. So we toyed around with that in the beginning, and some of the folks said, well, this sounds like work. If I have to report from 2 to 4, it's no longer volunteering. It sounds like work.
Right.
So it really kind of follows the weather. So anywhere from 0, and I've had as many as 10 people out just enjoying themselves in the park, fishing, bird watching, bike riding. So, and what I find is on the higher visitation days, I've got more park watch people in the park because it's a better weather day. So people want to get out. Now, when we have special events, I do assign people shifts. I try and keep it to like a 3-hour shift. But they didn't want it to be like work.
Right. So you don't also, does your management also not include, if you will, assigning certain, I'll call them tasks, but certain areas of the park to cover? Is it possible, for example, that you could, on one particular day, you could have a bunch of your volunteers who'd be all bike riders and enjoy being on the trails, doing that, and the other assets in the park not have any kind of representation?
I'm pretty well balanced across our visitation. I have folks that fish on the pier, fish on the beach. I have folks that walk the beach. They walk the trails. They ride the bike. So I have a pretty even. And what happens is when I have a special interest group that comes to me with issues, I tell them about Park Watch and say, hey, this is a way that you can be part of the solution rather than just coming to me with a problem. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from that. One of the areas we got was I had a lot of problems at Beach Plum Island, and the residents were calling and complaining. So I got a lot of them involved in Park Watch, and now the benefit to that was now they're advocates for the park there, rather than just complaining about the visitors that come to the park. Now they know a little bit more about what's going on there, and they advocate for us at their neighborhood meetings.
I see. Right.
Has there been any liability issues? I mean, is the park liable for the volunteers, or?
There is a certain amount of liability that the park assumes, but for the most part, I don't handle that. But they sign, I think there's like a volunteer waiver they sign that basically if they get hurt, it's on them. We're not requiring them to be there. Certainly, I think if we put them in a bad position, then we might be liable. But for the most part, that's handled by our volunteer office.
But are you liable for their activity if they do something? Is the state liable?
I got these answers about 17 years ago, and I don't remember. I asked the questions, and I don't remember exactly the answers. But whatever, I was comfortable with it. And the city may be a little different than the state, because the state has certain immunities because they're the state.
Good question, John.
Steve, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to put it into a situation just to see what you would say on this. Regarding the trail in Lewes crossing Kings Highway. Now, if I was an ambassador there and the guy shoots across at 15 miles an hour with a glance once either way, and you see it on a daily basis, how would an ambassador deal with something like that? That's a real issue that.
Yeah, and that's a hard one because it's hard to do it without yelling because they're kind of zooming by.
You have to yell. I've done it.
Yeah,
I know the reaction you get.
Yeah,
it's a number one.
Do you want to share that?
I will say this: I had repeat violations on the Junction and Breakwater Trail behind the outlets area, and one of my Park Watch members repeatedly was told off, given the middle finger, and unfortunately, he would always tell me after it happened, like, this is what happened today. And I said, why don't you call me when it happens? Because the person's on foot and it'll take them 25 minutes to get someplace. I can get there. And I finally was able to catch the guy and write him a ticket, which, felt pretty good for the volunteer. But yeah, that's the Kings Highway one. I'd have to think about that one. It would, something that would be a brief word that you could yell out to them, be both friendly and informative. And I don't know what that would be.
Thank you.
Great. Some good questions. Anyone else have any comments or questions?
Yeah, Savidge, I appreciate your time, and it was a good presentation. I had a couple questions. One, you'd mentioned one of the minor infractions. Could you give a couple more examples of what you consider minor infractions? You touched on the scheduling a little bit. Tim touched on the stationing. And I guess the other question I had was the communication. Are you just relying essentially on a phone, their own phone to communicate? Do you give them some kind of radio you're tapped into? Or how does the communication work with the ambassadors?
Yeah, originally we had cell phones that they could pick up at a central location, but then it got to the point where nobody was picking them up because everybody has their own cell phone. So everything is by cell phone. We don't give them a radio.
And then with respect to, you mentioned walking your dog, some other things, like what are some other examples of minor infractions that you would ask them to call out?
Yeah, the two biggest that we deal with in the state park is dog off a leash and then people in the dunes. It might be a parking violation, like, hey, there's a no parking sign there. I don't know if you saw it or not.
And then it looked like there was a hybrid of some of your ambassadors are on foot and some are on bicycles then?
Yes.
And
Yeah,
maybe Officer Moore can chime in here then I guess what would the plan for our ambassadors to be? Is it similar, like a mix, or mostly on foot?
So the way it's written right now is that they're looking to have them do either walking, jogging, or biking. They can be alone or in company. There's no set times. They get to decide their own schedule and where at on the trail they're at.
Okay.
So there's no set schedule or standard as far as what they have to do.
Yeah, none of our folks, we don't give them a bicycle to ride, and we don't train them to ride a bicycle. It's basically whatever they want to do for the day, that's going to be their park watch. And we did partner with the, I think it's the International Mountain Bike Patrol Alliance or something up north. Maybe Don can come up with the formal name, but it is.
Yeah, go ahead. It's International Mountain Biking Association, I think. Maybe.
That's what it is. And they have their own training that they do. And so we had a lot of mountain bike complaints up in the northern part of Delaware. And we brought some of those folks in as volunteer park watch. Didn't really work out all that well. They didn't follow up with the program. But for a while we had folks, mountain bikers out there telling people like, hey, you can't ride that trail. You shouldn't be doing this. And it worked out. And that's another organization that we kind of partnered with that has their own training and their own, I think they have their own liability also.
You're talking about the trail spinners?
Yes.
Trail spinners, yeah. Great. Well, these are some great questions, great conversation. I did reach out to Hilton Head Island, the city of Hilton Head, to get some information about their program that we have shared in the past. They're going into their 9th year with their bike ambassador program. Some of the things that they have that they do in their program is they have produced a training video for the volunteers. New volunteers will shadow a veteran volunteer for several days before they're out on their own. And they basically, in their program, they basically provide safety instruction and their safety tips for visitors. They might provide maps. I think Hilton Head has about 40,000 population, and they have about 60 miles of trails. So they have a pretty busy and active program. And we had reached out to them last year because it was brought to our attention they have a successful program and we might be able to glean some ideas from it. So I think with what Steve has presented tonight with the Park Watch program and what we've gleaned from Hilton Head, and then what the police department has already been working on, I think we're in a pretty good shape to frame and to start developing this program for the city of Lewes.
Our program would just be the city of Lewes, right? The city limits?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously opportunity in the county, especially with the Lewes Georgetown Rail Trail. There's been a lot of issues out there, and I think with Sussex Cyclists and as being a advocacy group for this area, they could certainly either, if they're not doing it, they could certainly maybe take on that task of working on being an ambassador group for those trails outside the city. But I think we have our hands full when you think about the number of trails in the city and the number of folks that are cycling now are in and around Lewes. I mean, we saw, and I'm sure COVID had a lot to do with it, but we saw tremendous numbers in the city of Lewes this year, biking and walking. And I'm sure State Park visitation must have been really off the charts as well this year. So
it still is.
Yeah, I bet it is. Yeah.
Now, the trail that runs in Lewes, in the city of Lewes, that's still under state control though, right?
No,
No, it's not.
No?
the from Savannah Road to Gills Neck Road is the city. The Junction Breakwater Trail, so that goes from Gills Neck by Bay Breeze and all of that. That is Denrex. But Lewes has the other piece, and then we also have the new trail that starts at American Legion Road and then goes to Freeman Highway, and after that it will be Denrec, but agreements still aren't in place for that.
Okay, so that would be under your Steve. That would be under your guys.
Yeah, the parallel section on Henlopen
Drive.
We've been taking care of it, but officially it's not ours yet. It's still DelDOT.
Yeah, that's the same boat we're in. We've been taking care of that section on the opposite side of Freeman Highway, but we don't have the signed agreements yet.
And I do ride that frequently. If there is an issue, Steve, would you like me or anyone else to reach out to you guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Sure.
Steve, is there a number we can call to reach out to you?
Well, you can call our office, 855-2110, or our dispatch which is 739-4580.
Steve, would you repeat that first number again?
855-2110.
Great, thank you.
That's the ranger office there at Cape Henlopen.
Right. Great. Well, thanks, Steve. This has been really, really helpful. I think coming from a place of experience with the Park Watch program, it's really helpful, and it'll give us a great jump start to getting our own program off the ground. So thanks again for being part of the meeting tonight.
My pleasure. Anything I can help with.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Moving on the agenda, under the old business, one of the topics that came up in the last meeting was about the trail bollards that have been placed typically at trail crossings. It was recommended by our committee to move it to the council. I believe the council decided to hold off on making a decision. Some of the concerns I heard back, I believe from Andrew, were the unknown costs associated with removal and replacement, who has the authority and the responsibility for making the changes, and then any additional safety measures that might have to be added as far as striping or signage. I don't know if
Yeah, no, I'm happy to speak a little further on that. I think you kind
yeah,
of
sure,
summarized
please
it pretty,
do, please do.
You summarized it pretty well. I just think there were just some unknowns, and one of the things that was attached tonight was the agreement of DelDOT, and even that agreement is a little ambiguous. It does talk about Lewes having ability to maintain the bollards, but then in the paragraph before that, it talks that DelDOT's responsible for things like reconstruction of the trail. So I think we need more clarity on, our preference obviously would be for DelDOT, if we're going to do something, to have DelDOT do it, because the second piece would be the cost. So I think the second part is understanding that as well, so that if it does fall under the purview of Lewes, what would the cost be? And then I still think there's some debate on, I think we talked about before, like the double bollards, does that do a better job of preventing, say, motorized vehicles from coming on? And I think, I don't know if Officer Moore maybe wants to speak on this. I think there may be some in the police department that feel, I know Chief Bell might be one of them, in terms of the double bollards in some ways is perceived as safer. So I just think it was just not enough knowns to kind of take action at the council level yet on that piece.
Well,
and I didn't want it to die there, but go ahead, Anne Marie.
Just to follow up, and Mr. Williams mentioned this, that there's one of the comments that was made was that if the issue is that people are going to knock into the bollards or hit the bollards when they're going too fast, then, you know, the whole idea is it's an intersection and people are supposed to be slowing down. And because we've had so many issues with people just going across the streets without slowing or stopping, I think one of the hesitancies I heard related more to, you know, reducing something that does slow people down when they're getting ready to cross the streets.
So frankly, I'm at sort of I'd like some feedback in terms of how we might consider going forward from here. I think one, the clarification around who has the authority. Can we change this? Is it DelDOT? That's one piece. And then maybe Anne-Marie can speak to this, is what's a potentially good forum to get the stakeholders around design, you know, best design for the bollards. Is it safe or not? Is that something that's potentially worth having a public hearing on to get some feedback from different constituents, such as the police and bike riding advocacy groups, and et cetera?
It might be a good topic for a workshop, and that way a workshop is less formal than a public hearing, so you can have kind of more free exchange. You know, and invite Bike Delaware.
Could we potentially explore because it sounds like there's also yet trails still in the city that aren't under agreements with DelDOT. So in a simultaneous process, can we also work with DelDOT to get something more formalized around potentially who's responsible for what and where, to make it more clear if these are types of changes we can make, or if we want to put striping down in other areas. It might make sense to kind of work on those two things simultaneously to see if we have authority, and then collectively as a community, what do we think are the safest designs at these intersections? That makes, do we know to whom we should be speaking with at DelDOT, I guess, regarding the agreement?
Yep. It would be Anthony Aglio is the manager there for that section, so it would go up to him.
Who was the person at our last meeting from the state that talked about it?
That was John Fiore. He works for Anthony.
Because he said they started out with 2 and now they only use 1. So
yeah,
that changes their design.
John Fiore is the bicycle coordinator for the state. Like Anne-Marie said, he works under Anthony. And I think there has been an evolution with these things. If you look at the Lewes-Georgetown Rail Trail from the city of Lewes, where the rail trail crosses Savannah Road, it then becomes I guess it's outside the city of Lewes once it crosses Savannah Road. Is that correct, Anne-Marie?
That is correct. And sometimes DelDOT forgets that.
Well, we reminded him recently about that. And one of I think there has been an evolution to someone who just made this point. There has been an evolution of these things with going from the double to the single. You know, I was a state parks planner for a few years, and we traditionally put in a double bollard at trail crossings, and we have since, well, I'm not there anymore, but they have since evolved to where they're either putting one on either side of the trail, so there's no obstruction, or they're putting one in the center of the trail. You know, it's all relative to the width of the trail as well. But if you look at some of the bollards in the city of Lewes, they're not really restricting vehicle traffic from getting on the trail. They're not really serving that purpose. That's why I think, in my judgment, these could be, the doubles could be changed to singles if funding would allow that.
I got a question about process with this from this point forward. Sounds like the discussions Andrew and Anne-Marie were having are really not in the purview of this committee, but who has control of this, where the funding comes from. Is that something that this committee should be dealing with? Because Andrew's letter earlier talked about we got to get more information about who's going to do it, who's in control. Is that something you expected this committee to be able to do, or is that something that needs to come from a true governmental element to start talking between DelDOT and the city? And whose job is that? Is it ours?
I guess I would say that it would really be for the city to take the lead on that, but to keep all of you in the loop and to make sure that we're coordinating, because again, I think it's, if something comes out of this committee, I think that we have a responsibility to, make sure it doesn't get forgotten. So I don't know, Mr. Williams, if you have anything to add to that.
Well, my question would be, hold on. Having some internet. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
That's better, yeah.
My question is, with the agreement in place, is the reconfiguration of a bollard, is that the maintenance of a bollard, or is that considered reconstruction? Because the agreement, again, doesn't give clear authority to that piece.
I
In
think
my
that
mind, if you remove the bollard and putting a new one, that's reconstruction.
yeah, and I don't know, I know Bonnie is on here as well, and I know one of the reasons that the agreement was written the way it was had to do with the city not wanting to take on a very costly reconstruction project in the future. So that's where the whole idea that reconstruction of the trail, if you get into the capital maintenance, that would fall on DelDOT. So I tend to think that it would be a city function. If we wanted to alter the bollards, that would be the city's role to do that.
Okay, and in that being the case, then would we be in a position to work up a costing for what that would look like, given the map that was provided of the ones that were desired to be replaced?
I mean, we could certainly get costs. I think because it is in the right of way, we would need authorization from DelDOT's railroad section because they own the right of way. I think that's where the issue comes in. I don't think that DelDOT would pay for it, but I think that but we would need permission from the railroad section.
And that's
Anne Marie, is that permission in the form of a permit?
Probably more just a letter.
Huh.
all of the crossings that we are referring to are on state managed roads, I believe. So Kings Highway, Savannah Road, I believe Gills Neck, is that state or city?
Gills Neck, at that point, I believe at that point it's city, yeah.
Okay.
Because it's this side of the bridge. So yes, it is city.
I don't recall John having an estimate. Don, did he have a ballpark?
No, he didn't have an estimate. No.
Okay.
Bonnie's provided something in the chat. She says, I don't think DelDOT can remove bollards constructed by DelDOT without DelDOT permission. The original agreement limited the city to minor maintenance only.
Correct.
This sounds beyond that.
Yeah. You have to remember that if you remove a bollard, you are going to be affecting the surface of the trail. And that suggests that there can be some kind of, you're talking about the integrity of the trail. And that I would think we would want DelDOT to address that. They would have the expertise in that area. And there's something that I think the city should probably stay clear of. That's my 2 cents.
If it's current standard, though, what would be our pathway to have DelDOT take care of it?
I think it would be I could reach out to both Anthony, to Rich
Right.
Siniger. Rich is with the railroad group, and, you know, just initiate the discussion.
Yeah,
So maybe that would be a
please
good-
keep me in the loop on that, Anne Marie, if you would, please.
Absolutely.
If he could even potentially come to our next committee meeting,
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
or, yeah. And if not, yeah, and certainly involve yourself and Don, you know.
All right. Well, good discussion. And
I'd be happy to.
go ahead. Sorry, Andrew.
I was just gonna say, I'd be happy to join that meeting if it's not able to be a full committee, you know, I'd be happy to join as well.
Okay. Well, again, great discussion. I think we've moved the ball forward a little bit further than the last meeting, and we have a little more information to see if we can find a remedy for this issue.
And I apologize for taking it forward. It was probably a part of being a greenhorn councilman, just not having enough meat on the bone when we took it the first time. So I just want to make sure that we have all the pieces before we
Sure.
bring it before full council. Yeah.
All right, great. And then just a couple of quick things on new business. The bicycle and pedestrian safety topic, you know, it's an ongoing issue for us to consider and to keep in mind. The sidewalk stencil program is basically going to be on hold now until the spring because of the weather. We'll start over in the spring with the and get on the city streets department's calendar and identify some of the high priority sections of sidewalks that need to be stenciled. Hopefully the ones we did this spring will hold up. But I would like to know, are there any other improvements that any of the committee members or council city officials have noticed that we need to address?
Well, as part of this process, and again, gets us back into who's responsible for the trail, but Tim and I actually did a few field trips, and some of the areas where there's some turns, we thought it might be good to have line delineation there, like you would have on a, you know, there's an example, Tim, where were we talking about? American Legion Road, where that it's very windy there, and there's an area where there's it's a serpentine path through there, and there's a yellow line just to remind you to stay in your lane. And I think there could be some areas along the path that could benefit from some more line delineation, just to remind, or maybe just have fun and have signs along the way that say "stay in your lane" or, you know, something like that. But
I think
that's
go ahead, Tim.
I was just going to say another rather sharp curve is at the end on the west. I think that's considered the west, maybe the north side of Savannah Road, where the trail makes a serious, I'll call that an S or a dog leg there. And we have bollards there, and I think it'd be very helpful to have a center line marked out in the trail there to keep people delineated, drive home the point that you've got opposing traffic on that trail and to stay on your side of the line.
That's a good point, Tim. That's a really awkward place.
Very awkward. And it's dangerous. It's
to navigate a bicycle,
there.
right.
In fact, I think as a general rule, I think if you walk or ride the trails in any place where there is a curve, and I probably should be able to describe it in the form of a radii, but I can't at this point in time. You know, where there's any opportunity for a sharp turn, there should be lines on the trail, in my opinion.
Yeah, good point. That's a great point. I think we could, Emery, we could probably address the American Legion Road section. The city could maybe address that section with more striping. That's a question.
I was actually just using that one. I felt that was a good example of where they've actually put, there's a line there that reminds you to stay
Okay.
right or left. Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
you were saying it needed extra or
No, I
additional
was just-
lines.
I was
Yeah.
holding that up as a good example where it's
Yep.
it's effective. Yeah.
Right. And that really speaks to where we it's interesting that we have, someone had the forethought to put the line, the striping on that section that Andrew just spoke about, but in other areas of the trail where we also have sharp curves, there are no stripes. So there needs to be some kind of consistent design element carried throughout the trail, I think, all the trails.
Well, that sounds
John,
interesting.
in-
I'd like to
in
talk to you
cycling,
more
is it-
about that.
What was that, Don?
I said that sounds interesting. I'd like to hear more about that at some point in the future,
Okay.
maybe.
All right.
Well, I mean, I think design elements
Good
are
question,
something
actually.
that we could always discuss more, and I think it adds something to the trails, whatever they might be, whether it's signage, wayfinding station, or artwork, those kind of things, you know.
Okay.
In your
Andrew, you were
experience,
gonna
have you
say
found that? Yeah, I think I'm having problems with my internet connection. I apologize. Or anybody, I was asking, is there any research in the cycling world around whether signage at kind of eye level, like a traditional sign, versus signage that's kind of painted on the ground, is more effective for bicyclists? Is there
Good question.
any insight on that?
Typically, both applications are used, especially at a major road crossing. Typically, there's something on the pavement, and there's something visible from several feet away. One of our concerns has been the Freeman Highway crossing of the Lewes Georgetown Rail Trail.
Yeah.
There was a hawk signal there, a flashing light signal that was either removed or was turned off. And it's one of the issues that we have been wanting to see put back on, particularly in the summertime. And I guess that's a discussion that the city will have to have, or maybe the city and the state parks will have to have with the River and Bay Authority,
Right.
to see if that can be done. I think it's
Don, to clarify, you're speaking about down where Freeman Highway hits Cape Henlopen as it approaches that intersection. Is that correct?
yes, exactly. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, folks are, even though the speed limit, we were successful a year or so ago in having the speed limit dropped from 50 to 40,
Right.
but typically folks are still driving at least 35 or so through that
Right.
crossing. So it would be a serious safety issue there if someone was hit by a car. I'm reading a comment in the chat. There's trying to figure out where this is, a narrow angle sidewalk corner at the edge of Savannah Road and Lewes Public Beach.
Yep.
Well, you have to go out and check that out. I'm not sure where that is exactly. I'm assuming by the person writing in that this is a safety hazard for cyclists. Maybe.
Yeah.
We'll look into, have to look into that
where
one.
that person's talking about that. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments about safety improvements in the city?
Hey, Don, I would just like to bring up, we've spent a lot of time talking about the trails, and it's a great presentation and everything, but some of the issues in town itself, to me, are as equally need to be addressed, or probably more severe. The first one is cyclists going the wrong way down 2nd Street, which happens every day. On a weekend, you can probably count 50 bikes going the wrong way. And they come down to the intersection, And I don't know what the solution is for it, but it's a phenomenal number. And it's going to be great to hear the presentation on Thursday with the Savannah Road, Gills Neck, see what kind of feedback we get from that. Go out there at any Saturday, Sunday, and it's the Wild West. People are going every direction, riding the sidewalk, some on the road, some on the wrong side of the road, right turn on red. And I don't know the solution for it, but it's an issue that's there on a reoccurring basis.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things that we as a committee, when we talk about safety, those are vehicle, I mean, they're there. And we all know that if you're out there and about, we all see it on a regular basis.
One thing we've talked about, Chip, in the past is to adopt a similar sign that DelDOT uses on Route 1, where they put a small red sign with a bicycle on it that says wrong way on the back side of signs. So if someone is on the wrong side of, say, Route 1, riding in the wrong direction, or I should say, against traffic, for instance, that sign is posted wherever there's another larger, say, speed limit sign, but it's facing the wrong way. So folks that are going the wrong way will see it. That might be a possibility for 2nd Street. I don't know of any other streets that are one way where that's an issue. I mean, maybe Chestnut. Have you seen it anywhere else, Chip?
No, that's the main one right there, because I'm on 2nd Street every day, and I see it. And then we've also, if you live in town, you're around town, everybody's seen it. And they come up to that intersection, and it just creates another thing. It's hard there navigating as a pedestrian just to cross. People are pretty good, but there's people that don't adhere to letting the pedestrians cross. So it just adds another element when the people are coming out of the bikes in there.
And Anne-Marie, do you think those signs would be available? Will we be able to?
We'd have to get them made. I mean,
Okay.
But it wouldn't be, I mean, we could certainly do that.
We could get the same template maybe that the DelDOT uses, so it's something from. I think there's one on Savannah Road down by American Legion Road, and there's a few other ones I've seen through the city, but that might be helpful, Chip, to alleviate some of those issues.
I can talk to Anthony. It might be possible to even get them through the DelDOT sign shop. I mean,
Okay, great.
Pay for them, but I know, I don't know if they still do that, and I know they have in the past.
Okay, well, you can take it out of our budget.
It's not going to break the bank.
No, it's not going to break our bank, I think. Yeah. All right.
Well, to Chip's point, the ambassador program that we were talking about earlier, would then that extend into the city in terms of bicycle interaction there potentially?
Yes. I mean, I think we envision it, folks being both as pedestrians and on bicycles to interact with folks, provide maps, safety tips. I think we could use the model, from Park Watch, whether folks want to be, engaged or more of a passive role, and just sort of provide some observation and feedback to the police department, that kind of thing too.
Because I still think there's two things that some bicyclists do that is dangerous. The ones that don't stop at stop signs at the trail, they just expect the cars to stop. They still think that's, that they're treated like pedestrians. And then the other one is, for instance, coming over the Savannah River, Canal Bridge there on Savannah, bicyclists, the cars are piling up, waiting at a stoplight, but the bicycles creep right up to the stoplight themselves instead of waiting their turn. So somebody who's trying to turn right onto Front Street has to also worry about a bicycle that snuck up there going straight. So they're supposed to follow traffic rules, right?
That's right.
So I don't know how that education, with all these tourists coming in, they're all different people from different states, how you get that.
Well, one of the problems is there's no bike lanes or designated, street markers for bicycle in Lewes. And I think if there was a bike lane, it'd be a little bit safer if somehow the bike lane matched up with the traffic.
Mhm.
That is, where is there room to put a bike lane? Any place we need them. Pilot Town Road, Gills Neck Road, and the part that's in the city along the bridge, there's just physically no room to do that. We could put
Yeah.
sharrows all over the city.
Well, we already have sharrows.
There's
throughout the city,
three of them in the city. I think there's
and
3 on
even-
Savannah Road.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
There
Savannah
may be a
has,
stencil on Second Street of a bicycle with an arrow facing the right direction of travel.
it's already there, John.
Is it?
Yeah, it's on Second Street. I mean, there could be a second one maybe installed, which might be helpful.
Maybe at every intersection on Second Street,
Yeah,
there's only
we
two.
could we could maybe look at putting one down closer to Kings, where it becomes where the one-way section ends. That would be helpful, maybe there.
Well, it starts by the 2 intersections up. If they put it like at the first intersection coming down from like the Historical Society, put one there where the do not enter sign is, and then the next one down too. Maybe they'll start, after a while, if they see it, they eventually make it used to not doing it or something,
Yeah, I think there is. I think there is one there, but I'll double check tomorrow. Yeah, it's to Marta's point. It's challenging. We've all seen it. Everyone in this group, cycles and walks around town. So it does get pretty crazy. I mean, it's not even during the summer. It seems to be anytime
Right.
now because there's so many more people out there on bicycles and walking. But everything from riding across the drawbridge on the sidewalk the wrong way, to riding down Second Street the wrong way. We're going to be challenged with this bike ambassador program, but it will be ways to have more eyes and ears out there and to support the police department too while we're at it. So,
Don, I just like one more point too, as everybody remembers when Senator Lopez had that infamous meeting at the library a little over a year ago, when he left at the end of the meeting, he said, one thing's clear, there's a lot of unclarity. And I think that still exists in what we're referring to around town, and if there's rules and there's laws, they need to be known by cyclists, pedestrians, vehicles, and reinforced so that people know what is and isn't the law. The ambassadors can help, and then the final part on that has to come down to enforcement. And I know Chief Speller spoke about it, that they can only do so much and be everywhere. But the bottom line is, at some point in some time, there needs to be some type of enforcement. You can sit down on Second Street and catch 50 bicyclists on a Saturday or Sunday going the wrong way. That would be one example right there.
yeah, that's a good point, Chip. And I was at that meeting, and I think some of the confusion was around the bicycle laws, the state bicycle laws, and I believe even the state officials and the city officials and others were confused about sort of where those laws, how those laws are being applied, and even what the statute says as far as what bicycles are allowed to, people on bicycles are allowed to do. We do have, probably one of the most progressive bike laws in the country, but there's still some confusion about what that is. So,
are you speaking the state has that or the city has that? John?
The state has one of the most progressive bike laws in the country.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the part about at trail crossings with the roads, isn't one of the laws going to expire in 2021 where it says bicycles can continue on as long as no cars are coming?
Right.
When it expires, I think they're supposed to stop anyway.
Mhm.
Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know.
The bicycle laws of 2017 expire in October of 2020.
2020? Oh,
2021, next year.
21. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so we've got another year.
Yeah.
At the end of that meeting, I was talking to Ernie. He asked me to go through the bicycle codes and send him some notes of what I think about them, which I did. Having read that code multiple times to produce that for Ernie, that code, shall we say, is not easy to understand on a simple basis. I mean, it's not the theoretical Delaware go through stop sign law is absolutely not what it says. There's a very limited set of circumstances where a bicycle can go through a stop sign.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I've seen people out on the bike path near the library yelling at cars when the bicycle blows through a stop sign. The car says something to them. No, you have to stop for me. I don't care about the stop sign. I'm in Delaware. Yeah, it makes no sense in a lot of ways, and it's horribly managed. The bicycle community, maybe outside of Delaware, all they think is, oh, you don't stop signs in Delaware anymore, and that's not the case. Not what is written.
Yeah, at that same meeting, there was a police officer who said if, for instance, at the Old Orchard crossing, which is outside the city, but if a car were to stop all of a sudden because they saw a bicycle approaching the intersection and it caused the car behind him to slam into him, he would ticket the car that stopped.
Right.
So that was one opinion on the police.
I think our police liaison, Jonathan Moyer, mentioned that at one meeting we had somewhere along the line, is when you get a situation where cars are stopping where they're not expected to stop or not required to stop, it adds to the confusion.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, you have different people following different sets of rules. It does. It creates a situation where you have, people getting mad at the car in front of them, not just trying to be courteous. And then you have people that think they have the right to go across because the cars are stopping for them today, but tomorrow they won't stop for them.
The inconsistency in following the laws is where you have issues there.
It was hard to understand what you said.
Right. There's a lot of distortion there.
I think what, in summary, he was talking about just the inconsistency of users, mostly users that are confused about the law or don't care to follow the rules or, whatever. And we've all seen those folks out there. There are folks that don't really follow the rules and regulations of the rules of the road, if you will. So, well, with that, this was a really lively discussion, really good to hash out some of these issues and to move forward. I would like to adjourn the meeting. Their next meeting is on January 26th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Meanwhile, I'm available by email or by phone if you have any questions or comments for me.
Don, could we cover a couple more things quickly before we adjourn?
Agenda items or something else?
Well, they're all items we've already discussed this evening.
Okay, sure.
Do we want to, and this is my thoughts. All right, we've covered several items here that we could ask the city to start looking into, formally, quasi-formally. I don't know if we want to write something up or just have our liaisons and Anne Marie bring this up. We talked about looking into one-way signs for 2nd Street, stencils for 2nd Street, maybe having the city approach DRBA about replacing the flashing light that used to be at Freeman Highway and the Lewes Georgetown Rail Trail. And we've seen a great presentation from Steve's over an ambassador program. Do we want to begin to pursue that now or just sit on it and talk about it again in January before we try to do anything? And if what we want to do, should we have our city representatives bring that up in whatever forum the city, be it the mayor and council, do they want to approach Chief Spell, who has apparently already written up a document, and actually start taking some serious action about accomplishing this?
It's a good point, Bob. And I have not had any conversations with Chief Spell or with Officer Moyer about blending or developing the program. But I agree with you, Bob. I think advancing this to the next level of being supported by council, by mayor and council, would be helpful. I don't know that we formally have been provided that support, and I assume that would be the next step. And council members, if you'd like to chime in, that would be helpful.
I personally would like to hear the coordination from what the plan coordination from the police would be, because ultimately you're looking for us to assume adopt an official ambassador program. And I think one of the things that Officer Savidge kind of put out there was the coordination, the need to coordinate with the police. So to Bob's point, if Chief Spell has already put together an internal plan, maybe a good next thing would be have him to present that, or that someone from the police department present that at our next meeting. And then potentially use that as a framework for the city to adopt.
Can we send a recommendation?
If you guys are happy with elements. Go ahead, I'm sorry, John.
Right. Can we send a formal recommendation to the city? Can we vote on it saying we'd like to see an ambassador program in Lewes? And then the city would set the program up?
So my suggestion, I'm thinking about this, is what I don't want to do is have you guys send something to council and then have it sent back to put more meat on the bones. But what we might be able to do is, over the course of the next couple of months, Don and I can get together and we can kind of talk through and start to shape some of these things a little more, maybe get the staff input from the maintenance department, from the police department on the various things, and then come back in January and then have something more fully formed for you guys to, make a motion on and make a formal recommendation to council. That way, when it goes to council, it has kind of the full shape of it.
That sounds like a good plan. Bob, how does that sound with you?
Yeah, as long as we advance it.
Yes.
We're going to keep going. I mean, there's a limited amount of authority this committee has. We can't really do anything but advise. If we just go to council right now and said, we really think it'd be good to have an ambassador program for the trails here in Lewes. And we don't have a final plan. That is definitely up in the air as to what's what. I think Steve gave us a good idea of a briefing about what are some possibilities. But let's even see if the council is interested in supporting it.
I mean, it would be a city program. It wouldn't really be our program. It would be a city program.
Exactly.
The timing is good in that, in the next couple of months, we're also working on developing the budget. So to the degree that the ambassador program requires funding, which I'm sure it will require some funding, we would be able to make sure that we put the funding in the budget for it.
And I think the other thing that John raised a very good point is around the liability. If they take action and it escalates into something, are they a sort of an agent of the city? I think that needs to be clarified.
Yeah, that's definitely a question we have to figure out, and also whether or not there's folks outside that live outside the city that have expressed interest in being part of this program. So we'd like to be inclusive, and any volunteer that wants to provide some volunteer time is going to be helpful. I feel like we're going to need a lot of folks to make this program work. So
long list of questions that need to be answered before this thing ever flies.
That's right.
One of them talking about who who can be a volunteer? What kind of background check? I had to go through a background check to become involved with Park Watch at the city, or at the state park. It wasn't much, apparently, but there's a whole gaggle of questions that need to be answered, and a lot of work to be put into it. But let's see if the mayor and council is even interested in going at it, because again, it will ultimately be the town government that's going to be responsible for the program.
That's right, Bob. And I think, you know, we have a good start with the Park Watch program as a model, the Hilton Head Island program, and then what Chief Spell and his staff are working on. Hopefully we can blend it together to make something that'll work for the city of Lewes. Bonnie has, in the chat box, has asked that we may want to request legal advice from the city solicitor on liability issues. So that's another thing we want to definitely look at from a legal perspective. So, and just to finish up here and to complete a couple of the comments that Bob made, Anne Marie, you said you would follow up with DelDOT as far as the wrong way signs and also the Freeman Highway crossing.
Yeah, the Freeman Highway crossing, I thought I saw on one of the local trail sites that it's blinking again. So, but yeah, I'll follow up on those things.
That's actually not DelDOT, that's DRBA, is that correct?
It is, and that was, there was a whole lot of complication there, but I can at least find out where that sits.
Okay, and you'll get back to us on that, or get back to me before the next meeting.
And then the other thing was talking to Anthony and Rich about the Bollards.
Okay. Great. So we've just created a lot of work for you, Anne Marie.
It's okay. I'm here.
Anne Marie, you do have the sort of the map that was prepared that highlighted the.
Yep.
Yeah,
it was in the packet last time.
Great.
Right. All right. Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming out tonight, or for being on this meeting. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night.